Not only do we have a friend that's in science, but we have a friend who understands this the whole thing with diseases and how it affects us. And she works with the University of Michigan, and she is one of only two Black African Americans that's in the whole program, I believe. But I know
In the
one of yeah,
neurology department.
in the urology department. And so I always feel comfortable when we're discussing anything medically, and she's able to chime in and share. I've brought her into Michigan United on several different conversations as we were rolling everything out, because for me, it just makes me feel good to have someone who I can trust and who I have confidence in, who I understand and I believe have our best interests in mind as relates to this. As I shared in my sermon this morning, reading through the book of medical apartheid, it's a lot that has been done to us. You know, Tuskegee was just one, but it goes all the way back, as I mentioned, to Dr. Sims, who practiced on slaves to perfect what he did for gynecology and things of the nature. But often the slave women were not even given the courtesy of anesthesiology and things of that nature. So he just practiced on them raw, and it was just, but he won, and first man to open up a hospital for women. But along the way, when it came to radiation treatments and all that kind of stuff, we were always used as guinea pigs, and oftentimes our bodies were buried, and they would dig up our bones, or they would find our bones in the basement where they had ran different experiments. So it's not been a pretty picture, but the difference, I feel confidence now, is we have people who look like us, have our heart, and are also involved in the process. And so, without further ado, we are grateful to have Dr. Rose. She's going to come and she's going to share with us some things about the vaccine for those of us that have taken the vaccine, and for those of us that are considering taking the vaccine. She will sort of share how it affects our immune system. So, without further ado, our sister and our friend, our in-house doc, Dr. Edna Rose. Happy to have you join us.
Good to be here. And I did have my little, I had ordered some of these because we have communion. It has the wine at the top and the little cracker at the bottom. So I ordered them so I could have them at home since our church was not meeting either. But I wanted to talk to you very honestly, because at the beginning when Dr. Duckworth and I were talking about this vaccine, I had some misgivings. I had some thoughts that were somewhat negative. And then I had to take myself, and what I'm going to tell you, most of you probably already know. Many of you have probably already had the vaccine. And if you've had it, then this is just some additional information. But if you haven't, then this will help you to understand, because COVID is not a new infection. In other words, COVID, when they say the number 19, that means that this is the one that was founded in 2019. Okay, so that's what the 19 is. But COVID is a form of SARS. It's called SAIRS, and that's a severe acute respiratory disorder. So anything that affects the respiratory disorder in that manner is called SARS. So COVID-19 is a form of SARS. Now, SARS, for those of us who are in the science field, is called zoonosis, because anytime there's a bacteria or a virus that transfers from an animal to a human, then that's what the problem is. Because our bodies, though the Bible says that we're fearlessly and wonderfully made, our DNA cannot come up with something to attack something that's not part of the human body system. So when we talk about COVID-19, I'm not saying to have the vaccine or not to have the vaccine. Personally, I had the vaccine. I got the second dose only because I had volunteered for Wayne, Washtenaw, and Jackson to give the vaccine. And Lena and some of the others of you, Nancy, you know that even when I brought you into research, I didn't bring you into something that I hadn't gone through myself. So even though I did this, I did have misgivings initially because I thought that they were pointed toward the African-American population. But check these numbers out that I found last night, and you'll see why we had to do something. Worldwide, there's 105,700,000 cases. Worldwide deaths are 2,306,818. The sad thing about those numbers are the number of the United States cases. We've got 26 million out of 105. So you can see how we're ahead of everybody else in the numbers, and we're ahead of everyone else in the deaths. We are number one. The next country is India, but they don't have as many cases or as many deaths as the United States. The thing that's sad about this is that we are ahead of technology from most other countries. So why is it that we're falling behind here? And it is because the information that was given initially was false. Had we had the information originally, we would have been on top of the situation. But someone said that they didn't want to cause us to fear. And here we are now with somebody dying every day. And sometimes the death rate is already at 2,000 for that particular day. So I go back to something that Hippocrates once said. Now, Hippocrates is known as the father of medicine. But he says in his day, when he was treating rare cases, he had to use something that was a little unconventional, because if you didn't use something unconventional, then what you were using was not getting the job done. Social distancing, washing your hands, and the mask. We need to continue to do that, but that in itself was not enough. And if we continue to repeat these same things, but the death toll continues to go up, then it's evident that we need to go back and try something else. So let me explain to you what's happening with the immune system. And for your friends who may have some misgivings, because my best friend does not want the vaccine, and she is a nurse. Okay, so we have to go with science. And that's what I told her. And Dr. Duckworth, this is why I had to do a moonwalk over what I thought. Because if I go with science, I'm in the scientific field, I am in research, I've got to go with what science says. So let's talk about what happens to your immune system, because what a lot of people are saying is that I'll just build up my immune system. I'll just build up that's all well and good, but it takes time to build up an immune system. Now, over 80% of your immune system is actually found in the gut. So whatever we eat, that's part of our immune system. Most of us aren't eating right. Most of us are eating things that have been dissected, chemically treated, and so you can't get everything into your immune system to work for you. So in the immune system, we've got an antigen and an antibody. And my doctor, I chose a doctor when I moved here from Georgia in 2006, and I chose a doctor that was about 25 to 30 years younger than I was, because I wanted my doctor to outlive me. So I went to my doctor and I told her, and a lot of y'all I've referred to this doctor because she's really awesome. But I told her, I don't want a swab in my nose. I don't want that, because in February and March of last year, I became so sick. So that was my first time missing work. And I couldn't figure out what happened, but I was deathly ill. So I wanted to determine, without the swab, had I developed an antigen because I had the disease. Okay, well, I found out in the blood work that there was no antigen. See, once you have something, traces of what you have are left behind. Okay, so now in the immune system, you've got your red blood cells and your white blood cells. And this is going to be very easy, because looking out, most people on the line are over about 50 or 55 years old. But do you remember a game called Pac-Man? Do you remember Pac-Man? It had a little yellow thing and it would eat as your kid. Okay, that's Pac-Man. Okay, so let's use this analogy. In your immune system, you've got red blood cells, you've got white blood cells. Now, I'm not going to go into what each one of them do. I'm going to talk about the major role. The red blood cells carry oxygen. I just heard someone say that somebody had to have an amputation. One of the reasons amputations occur is because red blood carries the oxygen, and oxygen is needed for healing. Whenever there's a disruption of oxygen to a particular part, gangrene sets in, things like that can happen, and that's why you end up with amputations. So that's the major role of the red blood cell. But now the white blood cell is a little bit different. The white blood cell has three components. And now this is when the immune system, this is what the vaccine does to the immune system. It gives you just a tiny trace of whatever this disease is. And what happens is the white blood cells wake up. You've got what we call the T cells. And you remember back when AIDS was paramount, they kept talking about the T cells. The reason the T cell is so significant is because the T cell has a memory. We are fearlessly and wonderfully made. This is a cell that has a memory. Now you've got macrophage, which is a white blood cell. And so when that macrophage sees the antigen, this bat virus coming in, this macrophage goes and tries to attack it. Okay, it tries to attack it, but it's losing the battle. It goes down. Now, when the macrophage goes down, then the B lymphocytes pick up, and they say that we're going to attack the cell. We're going to attack it more strenuously than what just happened. But then they began to lose the battle if you don't have something to help the immune system. But the T lymphocytes say, I got you. You may have come in and you may have did this damage, but I'm going to remember you, because when you come back the next time, I'm going to take a little of what you left, I'm going to put it with what I've got, and we're going to attack you. So when you get the vaccine for COVID-19, what you do is you give those white blood cells just a little bit of what the virus really is. And those 3 parts of the white blood cells go in to start fighting, and it builds them up. That's why when we first started giving the injection, and please don't get this wrong, but I really liked Pfizer and Moderna because they had a 2-step program. In other words, we can't give you too much because it would destroy you. So we're going to give you a little bit the first time. And that's what, has anybody had that second vaccine? And when you come back the second time, we'll add a little bit more to it because that T lymphocyte has remembered this virus. And so now it's going to come in and help to continue to build that immune system up. Now, on that second vaccine, I had both vaccines on a Sunday, the 10th of January and the 31st of January. Didn't feel anything the first shot, just a little soreness in the arm. Came back on that second shot, and she said, you might feel a little different here. You might get a little nausea. You might feel a little pain. But now my immune system is pretty much together. I'm a vegetarian. I tend to eat right. I sleep right. It's a lot of things I do, but I still don't trust my immune system because I overwork, which taxes your immune system. Your immune system regenerates when you sleep. Your immune system regenerates when you relax. Your immune system works best when you're eating right. And that doesn't always happen for me. I got that second injection and I came home, and I'm one of those people, I'm up at 4:30 every morning. I have to get up at 4:30 because I have a very bad attitude. And so I know that if I get up and get with God the first thing in the morning, it's going to help somebody out during the rest of the day. So I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. And so when I was up that Monday morning, so it wasn't even sore. That Monday morning, I got up and I tried to read the Bible, and it was just not coming clear. Now I stopped and I prayed again for the Holy Spirit to straighten up my mind, for God to give me wisdom, to cover me with your robe of righteousness, let me get this thing together. And I couldn't get it together. And I realized that I was so tired, and I slept for 24 hours. That's your immune system. Because see, that second shot had to build up the immune system. And what it told me is, Edna, you need to lay down and go to sleep because we got a lot of work to do here. And so I was concerned about that. So I went online and started looking at it. Dr. Fauci slept for 24 hours. So what happened is I talked to my relatives in Georgia who were a little younger. One was a doc, and she said, the older you are, the harder it is for that second shot to do what it's supposed to do. So you see what I'm saying? So that there was the problem. So what you have to understand about the vaccine, whether you're thinking about getting it or not, the vaccine is for the support of your immune system so that when this antigen comes in the second time, those lymphocytes will remember it and they will be able to attack it. It does not mean that you can't get it a second time. It just means that there's not going to be the problems that you've had because your immune system has remembered it. Okay. Now, like I'm telling you, the reason we still wear masks, the reason we still practice social distancing is because if I have something, even though I've had the vaccine, I don't want to give it to you. And then we got the next strand that has come in, B117. Now on B117, that's the strand that they found in the UK. They found one in Africa, and in the Ypsilanti area, I think there are 4 or 5 cases, and I think in Wayne, you all I think have it's 29 cases total between Wayne and Washtenaw, and the majority of them are in Wayne. Now they're saying that this vaccine will kind of help that B117. But if you go for COVID testing, the only way that they will test for the B117 is that if they get a positive on your COVID-19. And so you won't know the difference between the two, but the feelings that you get are going to be different. Now, this strand that they've got, it spreads 70% faster than the COVID-19. It also is more deadly than COVID-19. And so therefore, if you have this strand and you have the vaccine, there's some level of protection there. They say that they believe that the vaccination with the COVID vaccine will help you through this one, but they really don't know. They really don't know. Because what happens is that until enough people are involved in research, you can't say anything with exactness. You see what I'm saying? And therein, this is why I like Fauci, and this is why I'm glad that Biden has let the medical team lead out medically wise, because they will tell you the truth. You may not want to hear it. It may mean more social distancing. The numbers are going down, true enough, but the reason the numbers are going down is because more people are getting vaccinated. Now, what Trump was talking about was herd immunity. And this means that if 83 to 99% of the people get the vaccine or get the COVID-19, then we will actually be better off. But the thing about this disease and that herd immunity is you're killing off too many people to get herd immunity. You can't get herd immunity when you're when 2,000 and 3,000 people per day are dying. But when a person doesn't care about the numbers, but trying to get the economy back in check, they will tell you anything to move forward. So the only thing that we can do for the B117 is continue to practice what we're practicing, continue with the social distancing, and understand this one thing, that even though you may not have the get the injection, you can shelter in. And that's what my girlfriend does. She goes no place but to the post office and to the grocery store. And I told her those are the two worst places to go if you're thinking about not getting COVID-19. To the post office, I don't know what's happening at the post office. I'm just getting Christmas cards that were mailed in November. So we don't really know what's happening at the post office, who's there or who's not there. Okay, the grocery store, I started using American Express, because American Express is the only card. Now they're creating more cards, and you can tell that this thing is not getting ready to slow down. You have to follow the money. If you follow the money, now banks are saying we're going to try and give you a touchless card so that you don't have to put your hands on those deals, because nobody's cleaning that between people. If you go in the grocery store and you punch in your ID, nobody comes up there and washes that off after. That's the very thing that people cough into. That's the very thing that they're touching. And when we talk about COVID-19, on metal, it stays for a long period of time. On paper, up to 48 to 72 hours on metal objects, maybe an hour or two on paper. But now the droplets are actually in the air, and they really don't know how long they can stay in the air. That's why when I go to the grocery store, I let everybody that wants to get in front of me get in front of me. I will get behind you and stay over here by the clothesline until it's time for me to come through, because you really don't know what's taking place. Now, the little guy in the grocery store, he's got this little shield up there now. And don't you understand that they would not have invested all that money if they thought the numbers were going down so quickly that they wouldn't? That stores and places are still closing up so that they can actually come back and clean up after people leave out. See, something is actually changing. And for those of you who are credit worthy, this is a very good way to see it. Just in case you're trying to figure out why your account balances have dropped, you haven't done anything. You've been paying them like you pay them, but on there it'll say negligence and all this other stuff. When you check that out, what they're looking at is that there's so many people who are unemployed. There's so many people that are living off credit cards, until they figured if everybody we've got use the maximum amount of what they're owed, we're going to go out of business. And so don't be shocked if you began to see your credit card limits just going down for no reason at all. Those banks are trying to protect themselves because they know for a long haul, this thing is going to go on. So when you begin to see the financial aspects of things taking place, then look at it and see what's happening. Now, Isaiah 26:20, it tells you to come on in for a while. Come into your chambers, shut your doors, hide thyself for a little moment, because something is getting ready to happen. And I don't know. We talk about pestilences and prophecies in the Bible, but as soon as we thought we had it right on one deal, here we come up with another. I advocate, I would love to be back in the church, but not being in the church has made me take a look at what I'm supposed to be doing. You've got to understand that anytime you go through any trial, you've got to ask God, what am I supposed to learn? What am I learning from this? And when you ask yourself that, then we're not fighting in our church anymore about who holds whose position. We're not going to church in style and profile anymore. You're at home. So what you're going to do is, the harvest is still ripe. It's riper now than it was when we were in the church, but it's an individual endeavor. It is not the institution anymore. And so we don't know why things are the way they are. But the one thing I know is that scripture is being fulfilled. Washing your hands. Do you remember when you were a kid, your parents told you to wash your hands anyway? That's not new. That's not new. When you cough, people told you to cough into, that's not new. We're going back to basics because we have forgotten the basic tenets of life. And so I'm going to close with this. I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. But if you've had COVID-19, you need to wait 14 days, 10 to 14 days after you have COVID to get the injection. One of the reasons that a lot of the churches, and I'm on a task force here in for the conference that I'm in, a lot of times people don't understand why the churches are still closed. But let me explain to you what happens if your church is open. Now, we've got what we call contact tracing. When people enter a hospital with COVID, if they can talk, they're going to ask them where they've been and who they've been around, because they're trying to alert everybody to what's going on. If that comes back to the church, it's not a problem until something happens. And then the health department comes in and asks you, what is your protocol? And so the members of my church became upset because I was saying, no, it has to stay closed because we don't have a protocol. Why do we have to have a protocol? I told them, I says, why would you think? Bible says, unless the laws of the land go against the law of God, you're supposed to abide by it. Every place you go in a doctor's office, they're taking your temp. They're asking you these 3-4 questions. Where have you been? Have you been around anybody with COVID? Are you running a temperature? You've got to do the same thing if you open back up a church. The grocery stores close down an hour early, or they open an hour late because they're supposed to fumigate and clean. So what is going to be your protocol for the church? Now, I go to a little church and it's not but 15 rows on one side and 15 rows on the other side. And you sit about 5 or 6 people in a row because that's all that's out here in Grass Lake. We found out that first off, you can't sing, not together. You can have a soloist, but that's it. There can't be but one person on the pulpit because and if you noticed in the inauguration, every time a person came up, they cleaned off where they were, they cleaned off the mic, okay? The other thing is that if you open the church back up, you're not supposed to be in there but 45 minutes. So if we got to open our church up, and to fumigate, they told us it was $680 something. That means 680 times 4. If you went in there 4 Saturdays out of the weekend, you can't go in but 45 minutes. And the people over 65, they're saying you all shouldn't come to church. So by the time you take all those variables, it's not worth us going back into the church. We don't have a large enough, your congregation is large, Dr. Duckworth, but we don't have enough people. We're not, our tithe and offering ain't bringing in but maybe $3,000-4,000 a month, and we're going to spend $3,000 of that for somebody to fumigate when we can only come in for 45 minutes. So people will say, well, other churches have opened. That's neither here nor there. You're just saying that this is, especially Michigan. Now I'm from Georgia, but if you look at TV in the daytime, you can sue somebody for anything here in Michigan. So you don't want to line yourself up for something like that to happen. So when they tell people, even though congregations have opened back up, they're telling people those 65 and older must stay at home. Those with, we used to talk about it in Alzheimer's, comorbidities. If you've got hypertension, diabetes, because all of those are arterial diseases that deal with the oxygen supply. So what SARS is a disease that affects the respiratory system and it's deadly. So anybody that has any diagnosis, and I'm not trying to scare your congregation, Dr. Duckworth, but anyone that has hypertension, diabetes, or high cholesterol, all of those are arterial diseases, which means you're already having difficulty supplying oxygen to the body. COVID-19 attacks the respiratory system. And I can see sometimes, Doctor, because every day there's somebody, you know, when you ask God to enlarge your territory, you have to be careful because the more he enlarges your territory, the more pain you feel, because there's not a day that has passed where somebody in some area that I live or work is dying from this disease. So when we talk about not taking the vaccine, if you look at the numbers, all I'm saying is you're taking a chance. You're taking a chance. And initially, no, I did not want this vaccine. I felt like they were putting it in Black communities to make us the guinea pigs. But now the Black communities can't even get the injection now. African Americans are having difficulty getting the injections. You know why? Because more than 55 to 60% of the students at the University of Michigan have the vaccine now because they don't want the vaccine on their campus. So any kid that's there that's on campus has gotten the 2 shots. Understand this one thing too. Prophecy may be fulfilled again, but there will come a time that vaccine, and this is one of the reasons I did not want the vaccine, because I thought this was a way of identification. You've got too much on me. Those are one of the conspiracy theories that played with Daniel in Revelation and came up with the fact that that could really be true. But what's going to happen now, you're going to be limited in the future as to where you can go and what you can do. Trust me, if you got a passport, I could see them saying passport eligibility is going to be based. They don't want you in their country, because we have messed up. There's no other country that wants us anywhere. Even Canada doesn't want you to cross that border. I'm just trying to go over there to get some glasses. I'm not trying to say they don't want you there. We have made a big mess. And so Biden and his crew are going to have to straighten that out. But the only thing I'm saying is that we're not being asked to do anything that we haven't done in the Bible. The Bible told us that when these pestilences come, even when you think about the story of Moses, nothing happened to God's people. It only happened to them. And then why God allows something to happen to some of our people, I don't know. I can't answer that question. Why bad things are happening to good people? We don't know. We don't know the answers to that. But I imagine God sometimes walking down rooms, because I've had 2 members of my family that have had it, that have recuperated. And I thank God every morning that the numbers that are surviving are greater than the numbers that are dying. And I can see him walking through hospitals on units, just looking at the fact, saying, not this breath, not this breath. And so that same breath of life that God breathed into us and we became living souls is the same way that these breaths are being taken away. So we don't know from one day to the next what will happen. We don't understand why some people get it. But this morning, to find my friend's mother dying one week, the father the next week, and the sister that's actually in the hospital now, those concerns. But we got to be careful that these are not distractions. That's why I'm saying and I got this from a Baptist minister that I was raised up with as a young kid. He said, you pray as if though everything depends upon God, but then you work as if though everything depends upon you. So getting this vaccine is a way of working it out for yourself. If you don't want the vaccine, the sad thing about it is that if the majority of the people do get the vaccine and you don't have it, you will always be susceptible to that. And the reason it comes from China is because China deals with so many different animals that they eat, and so they're thinking that it came from a bat. But just remember, your DNA is not equipped to handle anything that comes from an animal. That's why when you get a dog bite, they want to give you these vaccines. It's the same principle that we're dealing with now. And so I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions. Right now, you got Pfizer and Moderna. Both of those are 2 vaccines. Johnson & Johnson is not a 2 vaccine ordeal. The Dr. Castillo, the doctor that I go to, is she's with Emmaus, which is a Catholic orientation. Now, the Catholic Church had a problem with all vaccines except Pfizer and Moderna. That's how things got confused. The reason they didn't have a problem with Pfizer and Moderna, and the reason people are saying, well, they just came up with the vaccine too soon. Not really, because SARS has been around since 2002. What they did is they just created a vaccine for the other strand of that virus. So it's not a new virus, okay? And that's why they call it COVID-19, because there was a COVID 202, but it's called COVID. It's Latin. And so they just shorten it and say that it's COVID. So what I'm trying to get you to see is that if you do not decide to get a vaccine, understand what the complications with your immune system. If you've already gotten the vaccine, just follow up and make sure that you get your appointment for that second dose, because what's happening now is so many people are wanting the second dose until the federal government is saying, don't allow that to be there while you're trying to give a second dose. Let's get this into the arms of people. So you've got to stay on it. In fact, when you get your first vaccine, make them give you your date for your second vaccine, because most of the time they will not let you in a building to get the second one unless you have an appointment. Okay, any questions now? Oh, what I had to tell you. So all the others use stem cell for their vaccines. And that's what, but the Catholic Church did come back and say that the benefits outweigh the risk. So there's nothing wrong with Johnson & Johnson and the other ones that are coming through. It's just that Moderna and Pfizer did not use stem cell. Okay, any questions? I think I covered everything.
Did a wonderful job. We are so grateful for your insight, and you always throw scripture in there as well. There are some questions in the chat, if you can see them. One question says, how do you sign up to get the vaccine? I went to Michigan website and it talks about COVID, and I didn't find a form. I went to the Beaumont site, got the activation code, and haven't heard back. Is there a direct link to find out the form and submit it to register for the waiting list?
Let me explain to you what's happening now. If you're already in a system, like say the Beaumont system or Henry Ford system or U of M system, they're supposed to take you first, especially because phase 1 was the medical doctors, the nurses, the frontline people. Phase 2 was 65 years and older. 65 years, and those who have that hypertension, high blood pressure, they're going to come in front of you if you didn't have one. That's how, when you register online, that's how it does it. Now down in Georgia, where I'm from, you can get them at the Kroger store. All you do is call Kroger store and give them your specs. And if you meet the criteria for phase 2, they may tell you, come on in today, because if somebody's running late, they leave it out. Now at U of M, Henry Ford, St. Joe's, they have portals. And if you're familiar with that, you have a portal that you can go into to get your information. If you go into that portal, all you have to do is say that you want to sign up for the COVID-19, and they will either tell you, if you call, if you go online, when they will be able to do it. The numbers and the places are so inundated with calls and texts until, that's why you're not getting a response. So that's the only thing there. Stay tuned to your health agencies, because I haven't, to show you how it is, I volunteered. I signed the Michigan volunteer to go to Michigan, to go to the high rises and places like that. A lot of the high rises are now getting people to come into the high rise and give the injections. So it's lots of different ways you can check. CVS, when I checked with them the other day, because my husband hasn't had his, they said that they would let us know when they were going to do it. Pharmacies are, but when they send those doses, they come in such large quantities until they try to send them to large facilities. So you can call the health center closest to you, and that may be a quicker route if you can get in touch with the health center. And the other question, is it to, your phone number to call to be on the waiting list? Yeah, when you go, if it's your portal you go into, they're gonna, your number, your name and everything is gonna automatically come up with Henry Ford, U of M, Beaumont, all of those that have, but if you call the health center, you might be able to get in quicker there, because the health center has a larger number of those vaccines. At the U of M, they gave them over at the stadium. This is where we got our injections. It was so many people coming in, their appointments, because the reason a lot of people cannot do it is because after they give you the injection, you have to wait for 15 minutes to see if there's any reaction. And a lot of places don't have enough space for people to go. If you have some health people, Geraldine, if you have some health people in your church, sometimes you can make some phone calls and say, I've got 150 to 200 people that are ready for this vaccine, and somebody might allow the church to do it, because some churches down south are giving the vaccines. They've got the health professionals in the facility. And Dr. Duckworth, if they do that, let me know, because what it takes is for you to be a volunteer through Michigan Volunteer in that county. If they get it, let me know and I will come there, because it's better to give them where people are standing outside in their cars at your church. You could do it that way, because that 15-minute waiting period, you still have to be 6 feet apart. It still has to be social distancing. And so that's what slows it down. It doesn't take a minute or two to give the injection. Right now, all the information is being entered on a computer. So that's the criteria that you have to do it. And that's how they're keeping up with the number that are going out. If you have COVID-19 and you have enough antibodies in your system, take the vaccine as your immune system. Okay, if you've had COVID-19, you wait 10 days and you still have to take it, because because with that other strand that's coming out now, we don't know if what you've got in your body was enough to carry you through. The only way you can determine how, if your antibodies are large enough, is by having the blood test to determine that. But they still don't know how long the antibodies will remain in the system. We don't know now if in fact we'll have to get an injection every year, because if you notice this, our flu shots are every year. So this may be something that takes place every year. And after you've had the 2, you probably won't have to get 2 again. You'll just get 1, just like you do the normal flu shot. And it says, when you received your second shot, did you have any side effects beyond sleeping for 24 hours? That was it. And I was out. It took me out. I could, in other words, what I wanted to do, it said the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I had the will to do it, but I did not have the strength to do it. And so I ate well, I drank a lot of fluids, and I just went on to sleep, because you can't fight it. Now, that to me was actually better than having the chills and the fevers, because one of my colleagues had to stay off work because he did have the chills and the fevers. But I also know something about his medical history too, that may have caused that. So when I heard it, he didn't tell me, I heard it from my other colleagues, but because he and I are close and I knew his medical status, that's what caused that. And I think that's why don't they test for COVID before they give you the vaccine? Because that's why they ask you those questions. If you have COVID-19, you've had a fever, you've had a temp, you've been around someone with it, but let's just hope that even if you had the beginning of COVID-19, go on in there and get that injection. Do you understand? Because see, they're telling you, even if you've had COVID-19, wait 10 days. The reason they're telling you to wait 10 days is because they know that that antibody is going to be there for at least 10 days. They just don't know after that 10 days. So when you come in or you go into your doctor's office, the questions they're going to ask you are going to lead them to believe whether or not you've been around. And even when you go to your doctors now, have you traveled out of the country? Have you had a temperature? Have you been around anyone with COVID-19? Any of those questions that you answer yes to, they're not going to give you the injection. And trust me, there are people that are saying no because they just want that injection. You say most people are not going to tell you the truth. Say, yeah, I was around somebody because they want the injection. And so they're saying, even if you've had COVID-19, all you have to do is wait 10 days and you can get the injection. But what they're feeling is that there are other people that are more in need of the injection right now. And so it's better for you, since you already have some of the antibodies, to wait a minute. Okay. So that's the reason they do that. Any other questions? I think I've answered.
It says when you receive your second shot, do you still have to 15 minutes? Do you still have to wait 15 minutes before leaving?
Still have to wait. Still have to wait. And let me tell you this: you really don't have to wait. You can walk on out. There's nobody standing there telling you your 15 minutes are not up. There's no. I took photographs and did everything. I talked to the lady that was giving me the injection because it's so at the U of M there was so many people giving the injection. See, that's what bothers me. At the University of Michigan, they probably had 25, 30 people that were giving the injections. And so when you came into the line, you stood in a line and there was nobody in that line but you. And then somebody held up a card saying open. So when I went to my open station, we sat there and talked 10 or 15, 20 minutes after he gave the injection because there's no one there. When you go to other areas that are more crowded, if you don't feel that you're going to have any type of shock, because that injection that they give you, if you're going to have any type of anaphylactic shock or faint or whatever, it's going to happen in the first 15 minutes. Okay, so that's why people wait there, because there you got all your doctors, you got all the people around you. I have seen some older people wait even longer than the 15 minutes. Well, first off, because they were getting a ride, somebody had dropped them off, and then they didn't realize it was going to take such a short period. But if you take you something to read, those 15 minutes pass pretty fast. And trust me, it's better to wait there, because if something is going to happen, you got all your nurses that's doing that. And so they would be there for you. Okay. And check with some of the high rises where some of your friends or family may be, because when they come in that high rise to give the injections, they just give them to everybody that's there. Do you see what I'm saying? When you received your second shot, did you have, no, it's down here. You were so very thorough, and this was so informative. I appreciate this. Okay. So that's about it. And I think I've answered all of the questions that were on here. And just remind you that when people tell you that they don't want to get the injection because it seems like such and such, remember, Hippocrates was the father of medicine. And he said that desperate times calls for desperate measures. That's where that came from. So if you're trying to figure out why all these things came up, these are desperate times. When these many people are dying on a day-to-day basis, we're desperate. We need something. And so tell them that, because a lot of African Americans do not like it, because they're saying they came up with these vaccines too quick. SARS, and that's why I told you that it was and I want to make sure you get it, because the SARS, most people say SARS, but it's a serious acute respiratory disease. So that's where, so COVID-19 is SARS. It's a SAR, because it's attacking the respiratory system. So that's just like anything else that came out. And remember, whether it came from a bat or a cat or whoever, zoonosis is the study of animal bacteria going from animals to humans. Remember, syphilis came from a camel. Remember, AIDS came from a monkey. Remember, these things that we're having difficulty with trying to figure out is because it's not in the human DNA to have the ability to attack it. Anything that's, and birds and birds and humans are the only ones that have the acute respiratory distress. Other animals can get SARS and live with it. But zoonosis is the study of bacteria and viruses being transferred from an animal to a human. And this is what we've got now. And believe it or not, even though they're saying bats and all this other stuff, do you all realize that there's a coffee that's made from the dung of a bat that sells for $50,000 and $60,000 a cup? This is how silly we've become. That's how silly we've become. So what you're thinking that we may have gotten from Wuhan, China, you really don't know that. We really don't know where it came from. It just came 100 years ago. And this is why those people that are way up in age, if you got family members that are 80 and 90 years old and they're still living through it, they developed antibiotics from the swine flu 100 years ago. They're still there. Do you see what I'm saying? Some people that are 80 and 90 years old, remember that lasted almost 2-3 years. That's why I'm saying the numbers look good, but let me explain to you what happens with society, because I'm almost to that point. You're tired of being in. You're tired of not going to church. You're tired of not socializing. And it's a lot of people that's going to do like they do it during the holiday season. They told you to stay at home. They told you not to be around people, but it was just too much. You couldn't deal with it. You had dealt with that all the way through the summer. So I sent a little invitation out to my family and said, I'm staying at home this year, so I'll be able to see you next year. You see what I'm saying? You can have Christmas in May if you want to. You can leave the tree up for Christmas if you want to. You just can't come over here. Do you see what I'm saying? So the same thing happened. It's just a day. You can move it anyway. And plus, I told some people he wasn't born in December. Shepherds don't keep watch over their flock in the winter months. He had to be the fall anyway. So we already missed it coming into December. So I'll see you next year. And so, and there's another one. I think I sent it to Dr. Duckworth. As far as me and my house, we just gonna stay here. You see what I'm saying? That's what you have to tell people. So understand, it is serious. And as soon as we thought it was getting better, here comes another strand. So that's all I'm saying. Be careful. If you haven't had the vaccine, you need to continue with the mask and everything else. And remember this, though. I decided at the beginning of the year that I want to do something for the Lord, and I'm still doing it. I do groups at a homeless shelter. And every Thursday when I go to that shelter from 10 to 1 o'clock, I ask God to encamp his angel armies around me and protect me. But there are too many people that are ready to hear the message of God. We've got to give a living word to a dying world. People are dying. It's time to give the word to them. And so I think when I told my pastor at my church, it is not the church's responsibility because we are the church. So there's something that we can still do while we're outside of church. But I tell my girlfriend, for some people, don't talk on the phone after 5 or 10 minutes because it turns into gossip. If it's not a fact, if you aren't doing a Bible study, say what you got to say and get off the phone because COVID is, you see, so you can do something, but you got to remember where your shortcomings and everything are. So that's all I got to say about COVID. I do have some papers on COVID-19. I have some on Moderna, but you can pick them up anywhere. Just remember, continue to social distance. Do what God told you. Come on in here for a while. Close the door. Just stay in here till it's over with. And Pastor Duckworth, I tell you this last thing that I did. It was so many people dying one night. And I came home. This is where I got cold. And I came home and it had rained. And you know how the steam comes up off the ground. You remember that old story about the Ten Commandments when the angel of death was coming through and the smoke was just right. I came in the house. I didn't have any oil. I got me some vegetable oil. I went out and I put that stuff on all the things coming into my house. I don't know what this is, Lord. I said, but they did it then. I don't have any blood of a lamb, but I'm going to do it symbolically, just like we did this Last Supper today. I just did it symbolically. And so I've covered myself. But I'm telling you, this thing is serious. And Dr. Duckworth will tell you, even when I talk about Alzheimer's, I try to put some laughter to it. Mm-hmm. Because if you just say it for what it is, it's too much for us to handle. It really is. So I appreciate you all having me, Dr. Duckworth.
Appreciate you so much. There was one question. There was one person who had a question. Sister Hudgens, it popped up. I seen her hand was raised.
Hello. My question is, I don't know if you talked about AstraZeneca. Can you please tell me about that one?
The AstraZeneca is one of the ones that are actually they're behind, because AstraZeneca was one of the ones, remember Dr. Duckworth, when we had some problems when they were actually coming through with theirs and a couple of the people died, so they had to stop their research. Right. So I don't know where AstraZeneca is now. I kept up with Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, because those were your major three that were hitting. Even now, you don't hear anything but Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson is about to roll out. But I will look into it and let you know. But earlier on, back during the summer, AstraZeneca was doing some research, and one of the people died and they stopped the research. So I don't know what they've done since then. And it could have, and like I tell you, when people die because they got the